Welcome to the Quo, a community of challengers, disruptors, and changemakers. I'm your host, Payal Patel. Join me as I dive into stories at the intersection of gender, race, and social and economic issues. This podcast series spotlights individuals from various industries, disciplines, and walks of life who are challenging the status quo. Through interesting and thought-provoking conversations, the Quo aims to elevate the voices and stories of endeavoring change agents in hopes of empowering communities and inspiring meaningful change within our society through education, advocacy, and the power of storytelling. Are you ready? Let's get it. Hello, Quohort. Welcome to another episode of the Quo. Happy May, and May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And while there's been a lot more awareness around the subject of mental health in recent years, there's still a lot more work to do in understanding the differences between various issues, best practices for coping and management, and most importantly, removing the stigma often associated with seeking out help. As someone who has worked on the management of her own mental health, this is a topic I am extremely passionate about, and I'm excited to dive into it today with today's guest, which is Sudesh Kannan, who's affectionately known as Dr. K. Since 2007, Dr. K has been training people to achieve happiness using his simple three-step process to cultivating joy, peace, and energy. He has been a regular practitioner of meditation and mindfulness for more than 20 years. He's authored more than 25 publications and is co-author of the book, How to Beat the Heart Disease Epidemic Among South Asians. So I met Dr. K in 2014, and we just discovered that as we were talking and prepping for this interview. And I couldn't believe it, frankly, because, in some ways it feels like it was just yesterday. But I've been practicing meditation for a long time now, probably around the time that I started to meet Dr. K, because he runs meditation courses. And I had my introduction to meditation through Deepak Chopra, which many people might be familiar with. And then I wanted to continue it in person. And so that's how I met Dr. K. And since then, he has been a valuable support system for me. And so I'd love to share with you some insights from him. And as we dive into anxiety and depression, this is a two-part series. Part one, where we dive into anxiety specifically and what that means and how it may manifest. And so join me in welcoming Dr. K.
Hi,
Hello. So good to have you here. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for giving me this opportunity, Pyle.
Yeah, of course.
There are two things I'm celebrating today, right? First one is I hope you see the magical pile that's in front of us, right? It's the transformation I've seen in you over these 8 years. Would you agree that that is quite amazing what you have done with yourself?
Absolutely, yeah. I myself feel the transformation over the years, for sure. When we're thinking about to our journey beginning 8 years ago, I'm definitely a different person now than I was then.
And I think that brings it back to that, right? Uh, we all have anxiety and depression issues to different degrees, right?
Right.
And I think you are an example of how you are thriving, and it comes from your attention you have paid to anxiety and depression. Would you What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, obviously in the introduction, that I have done a lot of work around my own the management of my own mental health, uh, you know, just overall wellness and well-being of my mental state, which also obviously manifests physically. It impacts so many aspects of our lives. And so in about early 2010 to 2014, when I started your classes, I felt the onset of my anxiety, and it was turning into something a lot stronger than I could manage on my own. And I was recognizing that. And so I knew that I need to do something. I need to make a change in order for this to not take over my life. One of the things I know you said that is that it's not something you can avoid completely. No one is free of depression and anxiety. And oftentimes a lot of people think that, oh, it's not something that's going to happen to me. I don't have to worry about that. But I knew that for me, in order for it to not have complete control and hold of my life, I needed to take action. And so meditation was how I started, and mindful practicing, and that was one of the ways that I coped with it. But I learned a lot more through your classes. So before we actually dive into some of those techniques that you've showed me over the years, I want to make a clear definition of anxiety. Oftentimes, a lot of people confuse it with maybe other aspects of mental, illness or health. So could you define for us what is anxiety and how might it manifest in someone?
Okay. Let me talk about both anxiety and depression in the same breath, because it comes together, right? Uh, People who have anxiety get depressed later on, and people who have who have depression get anxiety. And anxiety is pretty straightforward, right? It happens that heartbeat goes there, butterflies in the tummy, and it's almost the fight or flee syndrome, right? If you're going to go give a presentation, you completely freeze up. That's one example. So everybody knows what anxiety is. Now, depression is harder, right? One of my friend, we think I'm sad, so I use the word depressed, right? And I say no. I try to make there's a distinction between uh, uh, depressed and being sad. When one of my closest friend he talks about depression and he says, Dr. K, it feels like somebody's put a dark cloud on my head and I don't even want to get out of bed. And they're actually chemicals, right? The chemicals in your body that make us depressed. It is in extreme cases of a dysfunction of the brain, right? And that's the thing I want to repeat again, right? Don't take my definition here. Go, if you think depression or anxiety are stopping your lifestyle, right? Go get help. You don't need a checklist. If you're a family practitioner nowadays, before it used to be the family practitioner was not a good person, but nowadays they are good resources for you. Ask friends and family. And I think that's the key thing, right? There's a taboo associated with depression and anxiety. When I don't want to go somewhere, right? I can't tell somebody, oh, I'm having an anxiety attack, so I can't go, right? Whereas if I got a headache, I can say, oh, I got a headache today, I don't want to go. There's something about physical symptoms that seems to be easier to explain than mental symptoms.
Yeah, because
Is that a
oftentimes
good
people
helping?
can see it, right? It's
Yep.
it's what it's with what we can see versus what we can feel.
Exactly. And there's some seems to be a taboo saying, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so happy you're doing this topic.
Yeah, I think that the way to break free of that taboo and that stigma is that people need to talk about it and become more open about it, which is why I've been very open about my journey. Because I do think it's important that just like we would, like you said, talk about a headache or talk about, if I fell and broke my leg, I'm going to share that openly and let people know I broke my leg, or any other physical pain or ailment I may feel. Um, Yet we don't openly share, you know what, I'm dealing with a lot of anxiety right now.
Yep.
I'm depressed. It's almost like it feels like you're admitting some sort of wrongdoing
Yep.
by saying I'm depressed.
Yep.
Why do you think that is? Why do people feel that way?
And that I think is a two-way thing, right? I live in a man's world, right? And it's very, very difficult to expose a person's vulnerability, right? And you live in a man's world too, within quotes, right? And you know how hard it is to be a touchy-feely person in this society. And it's almost like we tell ourselves we are rational creatures, feelings are side, but it's the opposite, right? Neuroscience is telling us it's the feelings. Any decision we make, it's the emotions and the feelings that are important. Now, later on, There's a difference between emotion and feeling, and I'll talk more about that. But right today, the main thing I want to tell is right that change is very easy to make. And in today's topic, if you can see the slide, it's about if you can see the slide, that's fine. If you can, you're talking to it. Today's topic is the power of 2 minutes, right? That anxiety, that depression we have is actually an opportunity for us to have connection, purpose, and joy. If there's a pill that will eliminate depression and anxiety out of my life, I don't want that pill because it's very important for me. Now, please, again, if you are undergoing anxiety and depression, you're going through medical treatment for that, good for you. Get your therapy, right? But the goal is not to eliminate anxiety. The goal is not to eliminate this. And that's what we're going to do, right? Pyle and you, we'll just talk for the next 10, 15 minutes. And this is not the end goal, right? We want your feedback. We want your questions.
Yes, that's right. So to be clear, for those who are watching on the visual platform, we have a slide up, but we will talk everyone through it for those who are listening on an audio platform. But do walk us through what what some of the coping mechanisms might be, what might be a good technique. I know you mentioned a power of 2 minutes. What can you do in those 2 minutes to transform your anxiety into, as you said, connection, purpose, and joy?
Excellent. So this is the fundamental thing, right? I'm fascinated with the human brain. It's about just 2 pounds of 2 to 2.5 pounds for most of us. That means less than 2% of our body weight. It takes about 25% of our energy. So, most of us eat 3 to 4 pounds of food. We drink 3 to 4 pounds of water every day. We drink, and then we breathe about 30 pounds of air, okay, of which 16 to 20% is oxygen. 25% of that goes to your brain. So it's the biochemistry, right? It's how you eat, the habits you do. That's what makes the difference. And you can see, right? These are the four gifts that Mother Nature gave. It's distraction, it's loneliness, it's negative self-talk, and it's lack of meaning. And for us, there's different people have different grades depending on environment, biochemistry, all that stuff. But Mother Nature had meaning, right? And that's the essence of meditation and mindfulness. Is if you start seeing your brain and saying, "Hey, this is the way my brain works," right? Uh, we'll have a much better understanding, and we can cope with that. And so the bad news I have for you is right. The brain was not designed for happiness. The brain was designed for sex and survival. And then the second part of it is till the day we die, we're going to have some level of anxiety and depression. Right? So, Pyle, would you like to know what's the good news from there?
Yes, please, because obviously this is, I don't want to end on a bad note here. You just gave us some really devastating news that there's no way to avoid this. So what is the positive out of this?
So the good news is the brain is really neuroplastic. That means we can train our brain, right? And we can train our brain for love, joy, and peace. And if that sounds too touchy feely, it's for connection, it's for optimism, it's resilience, and for purpose and energy, right? So
Right.
that's the key message I want to share today. And I'm going to hopefully show you in just 2 minutes how you can make that shift, right? And let me quickly talk about this distraction, loneliness, negative self talk, and lack of meaning, right? I meditate 20 years, right? I still have these things in my life. I don't know about you, but right now your mind is being distracted saying, after I done this talk with Dr. K, I got to go do the other things, right? I got to do that. And
Right.
there's a reason for that, right? Mother Nature, 100,000 years ago, we were the lowest in the food chain, right? And it takes time for the brain to change. Why do I say that? So if a tiger was walking by, right, it would see a deer and say, oh my God, I got to run. And it saw a human being and said, hey, two-legged creature can't run too fast, easy snack. So that's why we always had to pay attention, and we still do pay attention. We always. Is this something you can relate to the distraction part, Pyle?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like we're always in a constant state of distraction, right? And especially with so many with access to social media at our fingertips and whatever, whatnot, it's so easy to get distracted. I get distracted even in my meditation practice. I'd be lying if I said that I sit there perfectly still and I don't think about anything. That's
And
not true,
and
you know?
yeah, and that's the key thing I want to understand. When you do meditation, it's okay to be distracted. It's that
Yes.
bringing back to the breath, right? I've gone through this in the
I
class.
remember you always talk about like a puppy, right?
Yep.
Yes, I
Good.
remember that.
Tell me that. How do you remember that analogy? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, in your class when you would say that as we're sitting there and trying to meditate, that you would always kind of give us that grace of it's okay if you've wandered off, just kind of reel it back in like a puppy,
Yep.
invite the thought back to your
Right. So you
the
can't
meditation.
yell at a puppy, right? You can't help. You can't yell at your mind. You
Exactly.
invite it back.
Exactly. Yeah, because we get so hard on ourselves. I know that I did that early on in my meditation practice that I get so frustrated with myself and then just stop practicing because I'm like, I can't sit here for 20 minutes and do this. But I think such an important aspect that I learned from your classes is that you have to give yourself grace and it's okay that your mind wandered. Just bring it back. Just bring it right
Excellent.
back.
And this is the same thing with this talk, right? When you're paying, listening to this talk, you may be driving or something like that. And it's okay to say, hey, I missed that part of the conversation, right? And then it says, hey, that's my distraction mind. And then, you can rewind it or whatever you do. That's the beauty of this.
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
other three are very, very interesting: the loneliness, negative self talk, and lack of meaning, right? About 60,000 years ago. And again, I'm giving you these numbers, they're not exactly correct, right? We think that's the time. um, there was a cognitive revolution that took place. That means we were Homo sapiens, right? That's the name we chose for ourselves. That means the humans that we know that we are wise, the wise humans. And 60,000, though we are 230 to 300,000 years old, uh, the species think about 60,000 years ago, we made this change in our brain. And that is this cognitive revolution. We started communicating with with other human beings. We started talking about the past. We started talking about the future, and we started connecting with each other. And that is very, very important because what would happen is a group of humans would come and say, by the way, I saw a big tiger on the corner of the river, and there's a bunch of deer there. And our brain developed that cognitive ability to communicate among other human beings, to drive away the tiger and hunt for the deer. And so that's the important thing, right? We had ancestors who said, okay, we need to plan for the winter. We're going to die otherwise. And so let's have that negative talk, right? And if our ancestors were positive, most likely that wouldn't have helped with our survival. And that's why we have this negative self talk all the time about the past and the future, because the brain wants us to survive. And the good thing is, when you get that negative self talk, that's where the whole bunch of tools available is to say, hey, okay, that's my brain, right? That's my brain. And then the last one is lack of meaning. This is the most important one. If you want to be happy in life, have a purpose in life, and I don't care what the purpose is, but create that purpose. And it doesn't have to be a lifelong thing. It can be, can say, hey, next in 1 year, I'm going to work on this. And this is important because if you don't find a meaning or purpose, your brain will find one. And it'll be as dumb as something like, let me watch all the Netflix movies there are, right? So those are the things. Uh, Payal, am I making sense here? Tell me what makes sense for you in the gifts of Mother Nature.
Yeah, no, of course. So, one of the things that made me think about how you said that it's necessary for us to feel these feelings. One thing that comes to my mind is fear operates the same way, right? We have fear so that our bodies have a response to defense, right? It's for example, if you were to touch a hot stove and you didn't know that that was going to create an issue or you're going to get burnt, right? Next time you get close to something hot,
There
your
you
body
go.
now knows that, okay, you have a fear, a response of fear, but that's protecting you from burning yourself again.
Right,
So
right.
it's very similar. The way you described it to me, that's
Mhm.
what made me think of that we need fear to protect ourselves.
Right. And I want to tell you that the brain operates in a weird situation also. Let's assume that somebody had a relationship with somebody who often liked wearing red shirts, right? The
Hmm.
problem is the next time they're in a relationship with somebody else who wears a similar red shirt, the brain will go crazy. And so that's why we have to understand sometimes our fears are irrational. So do you
Hmm.
see where the value is that sometimes we have to pay attention to those emotions and sometimes we have to say that's irrational.
Yes, yes, the triggers, right?
Yep,
Those are the
yep,
trigger responses. That's
yep.
what,
The
yep,
trigger is
exactly. And I definitely, that's something that I had to work on as I was working through my anxiety and my mental health. So, speaking of triggers, in that time, in that moment when you experience a trigger, I know you have said that you have the ability to rewire yourself before
exactly
you go
great.
down. So, can you share what happens in that moment that you experience a trigger, and how can you shift it?
Excellent, excellent, great. Now this is my key thing, right? If you understand this, right? If you understand this, the next few minutes I'm going to tell you, you can transform your life, right? So I like to think of the brain like, can you see my thumbs and my fists here in the camera?
I can, yes.
Yep. And so this is important, right? These thumbs are in the slide. You can see the green part, right? That's the limbic system, right? That's the radar. That's the radar for us. And I'll give you a quick story about that. I had a boss I hated, right? This is 20 years ago. And he used to travel, I used to travel. So we didn't meet each other every day. But sometimes I would drive in the parking lot of the workplace and I would see his blue Toyota. And that's what happens, right? This is emotions, right? This is hardwired into your system. The trigger comes, that green system, the limbic system triggers that. That's the emotional part. And then it really injects. You feel that anxiety, you feel that anger. And I would just get riled up. I would because I'm hating to do that. And so that is emotion, right? That is emotion. There's nothing you can do. That's the magic of 2 minutes. And then the feelings are the stories we tell ourselves, because then I already seeing myself. I'm seeing myself going and talking to him, and he's finding some fault with me, and then I'm having an argument, and I know the whole day goes bad, right? So this is the difference between emotion and feeling. Emotion is that 2 minute hardwire system. I can feel my heart rate pumping and things like that. And then feelings are the stories I told myself. So I learned that, right, very early. I learned that. And so what I did was I would drive in and I would see his blue car, and then I'd say, oh my God, that's my limbic system taking place. Where that, yeah, I'm a geek, right? I like the technical terms, so you don't have to use the technical terms. But you can say, hey, this is my emotional part working. And then I literally drove my car and then faced that car and then said, I pulled over and looked at his car and said, this is, I'm having a trigger. It's a triggering me. And I started seeing Wiley E. Coyote. Is Wiley E. Coyote still in your? Are you too young for that? The cartoon character.
Oh, no, no. I
Okay.
remember Wile E. Coyote. Oh, for
Right.
sure.
So I can imagine him taking a hammer and breaking that car, and I'm starting to laugh. Right. So I have a new emotion now, and we can see, right, my stories are now more empowering. Right. And I did respect that boss. He had a lot of knowledge. And so when I went and I said, okay, what can I learn from this experience? And the good news is I did learn a lot from him. And he was one of the persons who finally recommended a promotion for me to a manager level
Oh,
things.
wow.
So did you understand that? I have to understand that he's not a bad person in all, but we tend to see in emotions, tend to see black and white, and we have an opportunity to change that. Does that story help you about the power of 2 minutes?
Yes, it does. So what I'm hearing you say is that one, it's important for us to recognize the triggers that we have, right?
Yep.
So knowing that when you see that red shirt or that blue car or whatever it is for you that is your trigger, get into that conscious frame of mind that says, okay, you know what, this is something that's triggering me. And then the second part is before you let yourself go down that rabbit hole of emotions as your reflex response, that you are trying to actively change the negative story that you're telling yourself because you've associated that whatever that trigger point is with a negative experience, emotion, or story. You have an opportunity within the next 2 minutes to change it to something, figure out what your wily coyote is, right?
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
and create some point of happiness, joy, positivity instead of going down this hole of negativity.
Yep. And that brings me to the main point, right? Is that I like the word you said, embrace that anxiety, right? What is the greater cause and purpose? And what is the connection? What's the growth opportunity? And I'll share, about 3 weeks ago, I was with my brother. We were in Florida, in a beautiful beach. And I love lighthouses, right? There's a lot of history behind them. But I'm also afraid of heights, right? And so I'm climbing the staircase, and I don't know if you have ever height anxiety. There are 200 steps I had to climb, and I walked to the 100th step, and I'm having an anxiety attack. And I'm like, I'm a meditation teacher. I'm not supposed to have anxiety attacks,
Yeah.
right? And then the other part of me says, hey, you can do this. And I literally took, for me, fortunately, right? And I'm going to teach you that breathing exercise. It didn't take me that long. It took me maybe 30 seconds. And then I said, what's the greater purpose here? I know I love the scenery at the top, right? So then I gave myself that permission to say, okay, let my panic attacks aside. And then I walked up. And that's the important thing, right? What am I achieving by that? But most of the time, right, that fear prevents us from doing that next thing that we need to do. And you need to look at the bigger purpose and say, I can walk through this. Does that help? Does that story help, Pyle?
It does, yeah, that I have that's a similar thing for me with, airplanes. I have very high anxiety on airplanes, not because I'm afraid people often when I say that, they're like, "Oh, are you afraid of getting into like an accident or something?" And I'm like, "No." Since I was a child, I've gotten very sick
Yep,
on
yep, yep,
planes. I
yep,
have motion sickness.
yep,
Some people sometimes they grow out of it, but, I have now started to tell my story before I even get on the plane that I'm going to get sick.
yep, 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 yep.
I've already done it. I and my dad tells me this all the time. He said, "It's all in your head. You keep telling yourself before you even board a plane, you're gonna get sick. So yes, you're going to get sick." So I'm like, "Okay, I have to work on my airplane
The
anxiety."
story that you
The
were
story
told,
I'm
right?
telling myself
Right.
because it's preventing me from traveling and experiencing different cultures and worlds so I'm still working through it because
Yeah.
I
All
just
of us, right? All of
yes,
us, all
it's
of us.
ongoing. It's not something that's like, "Oh, I did it one time, done, fixed."
And that's what I want to tell people, right? They
Yeah.
they should check out. They should check out the website. I put, by the way, that I have put that link on that. Do you see the barcode there? It's a great 2 minute workshop, a 2 minute exercise on a breathing exercise that I can. If you're ready, we can walk. I can walk you through that.
Yes, yes. Please walk
Let's.
us through it. Yeah, if you're watching visually, there's a QR code, but if not, you can also go to meditation-magic.com and find it there, correct?
Yep, yep. And
Okay,
they'll
great.
put
All
this.
right.
They'll put this in the show notes also.
Yes, yes, sounds good. Okay, go ahead and walk us through this breathing
So,
exercise.
so the three things, right? Anytime you have an anxiety attack, the three things you can do. First one is breathing, because I told you, right? Our brain takes 25% of the oxygen, and remember, in a daily we breathe about 30 pounds of air. So breathing is very, very important. The second one is posture. I like to do the super girl posture, the Superman posture is to put your hands akim, or you can put it like a lotus position. Put your left arm over your right palm, and that's good. And then the third one is the story you're telling yourself. It's just acknowledging that story, whatever story I'm telling. So first, Payal, are you aware? How are you aware of your breathing? Can you visualize your breathing?
Yes, I can. Um, once I like to like close my eyes and like actually picture what my breathing looks and feels like. Yes.
And some of you, and you don't have to close your eyes if you're driving, especially pull over, pull
Yeah, but
over
please be somewhere
it.
safe when you're doing this, yes.
So that's good. And feel your breathing. And some of you can hear your breath breathing in and out. Right now, you don't have to change your breathing, right? And then what I want you to do is inhale sharply and then blow like you're blowing a candle, purse your lips into round, and it's a long exhale. Inhale rapidly and then blow through your mouth very gently, long as you can do. And if I have a heart monitor on you, Pyle, I could show you how your heart rate actually reduces with this exercise. And there's something called heart rate variability that increases, which is a good thing. Inhale, and some of you can hear your breathing. Some of you can sense, you can feel that breath coming through your lips. It's different for different people. So inhale rapidly and blow through your mouth like a candle very gently. And this is the key thing. If you can do this for 2 minutes, and we're coming to the end of the 2 minutes right now, just breathe that. Inhale, exhale. Okay, good time to stretch. How do you feel, Pyle? Was that helpful? Just doing the 2 minutes?
Yes, it's always helpful for me to take a deep breath and just slow down everything going on in my body. Like, because we're always
Excellent.
racing from one place to the next. So, yeah, it
Yes.
always feels good to slow down.
So, Pyle, let's wrap this up because I wanted to tell people, hey, this is just a starting place, right? I hope you check out our website. There's a feedback form that we'll ask. But these are the three things I think, right? First one is a 2 minute mind reset, right? Just the breathing exercise, gave you an example. Walking and dancing are very, very important, right? For me, I put my favorite song and I'll dance, to myself. Yes, I'm a lousy dancer, but guess what? I get my thing. Fruits, vegetables, snack breaks, very, very important. For lunch, I often have just a large uh, apple with protein powder, and most of us overeat. Okay, and I tell people I don't want you to be anorexic, but eat healthy fruits and vegetables. We all get plenty of protein, even if you're a vegetarian, you get. And then help others and ask for help. And there's a whole talk we can do on this separately, Pile, when you think. But coaching is a very important thing, right? And success is a staircase, it's not a doorway. We work at it. I'm working at it all the time. And I want to end with my favorite Brené Brown quote, right? And by the way, the feedback form, if you're watching it, there's a feedback form and there's a QR code for it. Please, Pyle and I would love your comments. I'll come back again in a couple of weeks, but give us some feedback. But I want to end with Brené Brown's quote, right? Wholehearted living is about engaging in our lives from a place of worthiness. It means cultivating the courage, compassion, and connection to waking up in the morning and thinking, no matter what gets done and how much is left is undone, I'm enough. It's going to bed at night thinking, yes, I'm imperfect and vulnerable and sometimes afraid, but that doesn't change the truth that I'm also brave, worthy of love and belonging. Brené Brown. I love Brené Brown. I love her books.
Yeah, I was
How's
just
the
gonna say, who doesn't? I mean, she's always full of inspirational words. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
Brene Brown's
So,
awesome.
so any last minute comments, questions? Was this helpful, Payal, for you?
Oh yeah, this is always helpful. It's even though I've spent so much time learning this from you in your classes, this is like a refresher, course for me. So it's always nice to revisit. And for those who want to seek out additional resources, they can find it on your website, correct?
Yep, you can find it on my website. And the short link is please give us your feedback and please check out our website. And we have a lot of events. If you're in the Chicago area, check out some of the events. We have some free walking meditation. In fact, we got a moonlit night walking meditation. Pyle, you should see if you can come down for that to Schaumburg.
Oh yeah,
So excellent.
especially as the weather warms up, it's nice to
Yeah,
get outside, right?
excellent.
Okay, so yeah, meditation-magic.com, and then the feedback form that we are referencing, it's the short link is bit.ly heal anxiety depression. And you can find that also on our social media pages. And we'd love to hear from you and see if this was helpful. This is, like I mentioned, part 1 of a part 2 series we're doing in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month. Today, we focused on anxiety and coping mechanisms around anxiety. In the next phase, we will discuss and dig a little bit deeper into depression and ways that we can cope with that as well. So thank you to everyone who has been listening. Hopefully this has been helpful and beneficial for you. And a special thank you to Dr. K for joining us today. Thanks so much for sharing your wisdom and imparting some great tips and knowledge with us.
Pyle, thanks for doing this for me.
All right, everyone, we will catch you later this month. Take care. Hey, it's me again. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, and I really hope you did, please subscribe to the show on your favorite streaming service so that you're notified when new episodes are posted. Also, be sure to follow The Quo on social media at The Quo Media across all platforms for the latest and greatest. Thanks again for joining, supporting, and uplifting the Quo community, or as I like to call it, our Quohort. Catch you next time.